Well, here we are at Module 5. We only have this one and one more to go, and we're done the course. I can't believe it. Last module, we were talking about quantitative methodologies. This module, we're talking about qualitative methodologies. And this is territory that I have to confess to being much more comfortable with, although I did learn a lot from the readings from the last one and our discussions. I have to say the discussions on the forums have been absolutely stellar, and I've really enjoyed reading your comments. Don't always comment myself, but I'm certainly reading them and enjoying them, and there's a lot of very good thinking going on about what you're going to be doing and how you're thinking about the methodologies that you're using, so I'm really pleased with that. I wanted to talk, first of all, before we get into some of the content, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the content, but just pointing to some key information that I think would be worth talking about. I wanted to point out that in Module 6, you're going to be kind of swamped with assignments. And I sort of apologize for that, but I think you probably recognize that the timing for these is necessary in order to have the kind of content background that you're going to need to approach them in a very kind of expert way. So while I apologize for it, the good thing is that that particular module is 3 weeks. I think it's a little more than 3 weeks long, so you have lots of time to get all 3 assignments done, or at least more than you might normally have. And you don't have a form. You do have one reading, and we'll be talking about that. But other than that, that's it. And so basically you'll be concentrating on the assignments, and we'll set up a little forum so that people can talk to one another and get answers for their questions and that sort of thing for the various assignments. First one you're already familiar with, and that is the second set of articles for your article critique assignment. In this case, rather than 7 papers, you're going to be choosing 8 papers, but the flip side of that is that you're only going to be critiquing 3. I would suggest that if you did lots of quantitative papers the last time, you choose qualitative papers this time, or at least a good sampling of them, and vice versa, so that you have an opportunity to explore the various kinds of methodologies. And in that way, you'll be able to make choices for your own work much more knowledgeably. So you will critique 3 of them, but rather than just simply doing a quick précis of each of the articles, you're actually going to be, for the second part of the assignment, synthesizing key ideas across all 8 papers. So you're going to need to identify what the key ideas are in each paper and then do an analysis of what those 8 papers tell you about a particular phenomenon. So that suggests, even though it doesn't say specifically in that particular assignment, that you'll need to be looking for, and of course it's to your benefit as well, to look for papers that are around a particular theme. So that particular assignment is going to be due on March the 22nd. I may, and I don't want to inundate you with too much to read, but there are a couple of things that I think might be helpful. A good friend of mine at the University of Nottingham, Pat Thompson, her expertise is around academic writing, and she has done a couple of really interesting, one at least, and she may have done more, a really interesting and well-crafted, a very thoughtful and very accessible column in a blog that she does on academic writing about literature reviews. And that might be helpful to you, along with, of course, the Creswell that you did near the beginning of the course. So that's the first assignment. The second assignment will be listed when you submit it as Creswell chapter. And basically what you're going to be doing here is signing up, and if you haven't already, I hope that you will very soon. A subtle little reminder there. That you'll be choosing one of the Creswell chapters about specific kinds of methods. And so it could be mixed methods, it could be ethnomethodology, and there are a whole range of them. You'll sign up for one, and then you will develop a concept map. And in the, I think it's in the syllabus and in the description of the assignment, You'll find some suggestions for if you're not sure how to do a concept map, and I'm not, you know, I can kind of guess, but there are some suggestions for some resources for that. And so you might find that quite helpful. After you've done your concept map, where you map out the various aspects of that particular approach to research, then you're going to write a mini paper. It's 300 words, so it's not very long at all. It's about the length of the critique that you did, where you will just simply map out very precisely, concisely, what that particular research approach is about. So you can kind of think of it as the academic version of talking to your Uncle Phil at barbecue this summer, and he says to you, what research method are you going to use? Can't imagine that conversation, but nevertheless. So, you know, you'll approach it in a very concise and precise way. And you will, of course, use APA and so on. Your references will not be counted towards your word count, by the way. So, and, you know, same thing, 1.5, 2 spaces, 12-point font, number your pages, title page, etc. Okay. Now, of course, having done all of that work, all of us would benefit from having a chance to see it. I know I do, as the person who's marking it. So, in order for your colleagues to benefit from the work that you've done, because it seems too much of a shame for me to be the only one who see that work, you'll be presenting it to your colleagues using a variety of approaches. And you don't get extra marks for being really fancy. You may choose to be, but you don't have to be. You can simply put together a short PowerPoint. It shouldn't take more than 10 minutes for someone to go through it. And you can, I think on PowerPoint, I think you can record a commentary. So you can find out about that. You can also use the technology that I'm using, which is a very easy thing to do. It's called Screencast-O-Matic. And I'll put this on a post that I'll be posting in the next week or so. But it's a very, very easy technology. It's free, unless you want the fancy version. But for most things, you can get away with the free version. And basically, what it does is just simply videotape whatever is on your website. So you have a frame that catches the content. You can set it for the size that you need. You can edit if you want to edit out any little blips at the beginning when you're getting things to fit. And you can, you know, I would suggest playing around with it a bit, and then you can do just what I do: just speak to the can't think, the slide, and then you can post that. Once you've posted it, you need to post it to YouTube. So you would post it to YouTube, and then you would put the link for that YouTube presentation onto eClass, and I'll be providing a link for you to submit all of this. And then you, as a colleague of someone who's done something that you're interested in looking at, can go in and you can either download that, take note of the URL for future reference if you want to go back to it in the future, etc. But that way you'll be able to share with one another your ideas. It's sort of second best to being able to sit together in a classroom and actually have 10-minute presentations and some discussion. And I think it might be worthwhile to set up a forum so that you can talk back and forth if you wish, but we'll see about that. At any rate, that's the second assignment. And the third one, and if you have any ideas about sharing too, please tell me about them. And if you want me to set up a forum, then let me know that, so that I don't want to add to the work that you have. But on the other hand, if you feel that would be helpful, then I can certainly provide that for you. So be thinking about that and let me know. And the third assignment is the research approaches to paper. And the description of this is in your syllabus. And the information, the actual papers that you will compare is under the assignment link. And what you will do is choose two. There are two sets of papers. You'll choose one set of papers, have a read, and then compare them. Those papers are going to be taken out of the same research project. So someone has done research on a particular topic. They have written it up for a an academic audience, and they have written it up for a professional audience. And then you will look at, as a research writer, researcher, you'll be able to look at those and see what are the similarities and differences between the approaches that the authors use. This will be helpful to you in a whole range of ways, just as a part of your academic writing, but it will also be helpful because many of you will be doing exactly this. You will be perhaps preparing an article for a professional journal of some kind. It could be the ATA journal, or it could be other journals that are available either locally, or it could be more nationally, Phi Delta Kappa and so on. And that will be for a professional audience. And there are differences in the approaches that people use. So your job will be to compare those papers and think about what the differences are in those forms of writing. Okay, our readings for Module 5 are Creswell chapters 7 and 8, and Patton, Michael Quinn Patton, Enhancing the Quality and Credibility of Qualitative Analysis. He's writing for Health Services Research. He is he's an evaluator, a program evaluator, who uses qualitative analysis, and he's done quite a bit of writing on qualitative methodology. It's interesting that he's doing this for health services because the health services tend to be highly quantitative. So in some ways, he's providing a rationale for the ways in which he approaches qualitative evaluation. He was an academic. He graduated from University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. University of Milwaukee was, whichever it is. University of Wisconsin-Madison, that's what it is, sorry. And taught at the University of Minnesota for many years. And then I'm guessing that this work as an evaluator continued to increase, and he then left academic life and became a program evaluator and did that as a profession, headed up a large organization of evaluators, and so seen as an expert in this field. And what he's doing, as I said, is providing a rationale and thinking through some of the issues related to the credibility of qualitative research. So what do these authors tell us about qualitative research? And I'm talking about this in a nutshell. Of course, they talk in much more detail. Creswell does, I think, a really exemplary job of putting together a couple of chapters on the hows of doing qualitative research. In some ways, he talks about the what's and the whys, but mostly he approaches the hows. And in the first chapter, the chapter 7, he talks about how to organize your research study and collect data. There's some really, really interesting and worthwhile information there. So if you're thinking about qualitative research, this is an excellent chapter to give you the basics and a little bit more in terms of how you actually approach doing the work of a qualitative researcher. And in this chapter 8, he goes on and he talks about analyzing and interpreting qualitative data, a very, very complex task, actually. And, you know, I could regale you with stories of people having charts all over walls and color tagged and all kinds of ways in which people have taken this mass of information, this mass of data, and made meaning from it. So, for example, in my for my master's thesis, I interviewed, I'm trying to think, I think it was 3 people, and then a couple of did document analysis, and I ended up with a very large binder full of information, mostly the transcriptions from the interviews. For my doctoral work, I had a couple of binders full because I did 4 equity officers, I did senior administration at their boards, and those transcripts, because I did 3 with each of the equity officers, plus a focus group, those all had to be transcribed and all found their way into a large binder. I did not use NVivo, SPSS, or any of the other programs. I used good old colored pens and that way of kind of organizing the information. So very low tech, but it worked. And so he talks about that, and he talks about it in some detail, and it's very, very good. He does this kind of work obviously all the time, so he uses a lot of the electronic programs and so on. And so he's quite a fan, but you don't have to use them. There are other ways in which that he talks about actually, or ways in which to organize the information similarly, but using the usual colored pens and sticky notes and so on to organize it. Okay, so Patton then explores a more philosophical issue. And he suggests that given the range of qualitative approaches to research, and there are many, and he lists many of them, and there are many, many more, issues of quality and credibility in relation to the audience and intended purpose of the research becomes important. So this is a very interesting way to approach the whole question of thinking about qualitative research, because of course you're doing this research for a reason. You are attempting to answer a question not just for yourself, but hopefully for other professional colleagues, for other academic researchers who may be able to use it as a part of their literature review for further work and so on. So he's talking about how is it that we can actually, in other words, be credible researchers, and how can our research be seen as credible as well. So the first issue that he takes up is credibility. And he argues that the way in which we achieve credibility is through rigorous techniques and methods. And that includes high quality data that's carefully analyzed. And Creswell, of course, offers lots of opportunity to think about what that might look like. And attention to issues of validity, reliability, and triangulation. And triangulation is one of the ways in which you engender validity and reliability. And triangulation can take many, many forms. The research project that I just described, where I talked to a variety of players within the field around the question that I was asking. I did document analysis. I did a focus group. I asked for their feedback and so on. There are a variety of ways in which we can ensure through triangulation, through various means, that the information that we've gathered is saturated. That is, it's gotten to the point where if we kept researching, we're not going to get a lot more out of it, and that it is has been not confirmed, but enriched by this plethora of ways in which it has been explored. And he makes that point. He says that triangulation is not necessarily to confirm that what A said is exactly the same as what B said, therefore valid, but rather A and B's in conjunction with one another enrich our understanding about the particular phenomenon that we're looking at. So they are related, but they're not necessarily the same, particularly if you use different methods around the same questions. So for example, if you use quantitative analysis and qualitative analysis, by their very nature, you're going to get different kinds of information. So so it's not necessarily to confirm, but to I would say to enrich. He doesn't say that precisely, but that's what I read from it. He talks about the credibility of the researchers being very important too, and that's why you, in order for your research to be seen as credible, are taking this course, are going to be taking others where you're going to continue to talk about research, experience, and he gives the example of observation as one of the ways in which we become experienced, where we become knowledgeable about the kinds of things that we need to be attending to and how we can organize that information to make it meaningful, how we can train ourselves to be attentive to the things that we're paying, that we have decided need to be paid attention to, and are knowledgeable enough to be able to keep track of those outlying pieces of information that could add something to our data set. Our track record, and that for academics comes out of our publications, presentations at conferences and so on. Your track record is going to come out of your presentation at teachers' conferences and that sort of thing. And then, of course, your status as a graduate student, for example, the way in which you present yourself, your transparency around your position. So you may have a particular belief about something, and you make that obvious. You actually become transparent about that for those who are reading your work. If you're doing work on the principalship and you're a principal, then you need to make that say that, so that the reader can then make a decision about how credible your research is in light of your positionality and the effect that that might have on the work that you're doing and on the conclusions that you come to. Your philosophical belief in the value of qualitative inquiry and the various ways in which it is gathered. He argues too, and I think this is a really important argument, and I think I wish I'd read this years ago. Would have saved me a lot of grief. But there's a bias, always has been and continues to be to a lesser degree, but nevertheless it's still there, against qualitative research. It's seen as soft data, whereas science and quantitative analysis based on hard numbers is seen as somehow more valid and more credible. But he points to the seductiveness of numbers. And this is, I would argue, and lots of literature would argue, is especially predominant within neoliberal democracies. We have entered an age of accountability where everything needs to be counted and accounted for. This is a predominant ideology throughout, certainly North America, throughout most democratic countries and non-democratic countries as well. PISA scores, for example, are given incredible credence, so that Canada's students against Sweden's students against Fijian students and so on, and we make all kinds of judgments around where we sit on these numerical scales. So numbers do matter, and they do matter greatly these days. But he argues instead that we need to instead be paying attention to meaningfulness, that as qualitative or as quantitative researchers, for that matter, we need to be for pro-meaningfulness, and I really like this. And by that he means that while quantitative and qualitative methods are different, neither is better and neither is worse. Pardon me. They are different, and they provide a different view, sometimes of the same phenomena. And in that way, they enrich our understanding of it. Now, there's some practical issues, and Creswell gets into these, and I wouldn't feel that I had been ethical if I hadn't at least pointed these out, because these are the kind of niggly things that can get in the way of your research. When you're planning your research, it's really important to keep in mind the time and money involved. So if you are taking on a new principalship, for example, and you have a very complicated, complex research project in mind where you're going to have to travel around the province, that may not be possible. So you need to look at what's possible. It will be as legitimate, but it may be a more discrete kind of question that you're exploring. And money may be an issue. You may not want to expend or have the money to expend to do the kind of traveling where you might want to compare the students in Alberta to the students in Prague. So let's keep in mind what's realistic given the circumstances. Your equipment needs to be managed carefully, and you need to have a backup. So if you're going to use tape recorders for your research, then you need to probably have two, and you need to have lots of batteries if they take batteries, and you probably need to, certainly need to bring both of them, and you need to either be able to look discreetly to see if the tape recorder is still going and recording, or have both of them going and make sure they have new batteries before you start, so that you're sure that you're capturing what's there. I've had that happen a couple of times. Once using videotape, nothing on the video, and it was not a situation that could be replicated. And another case that the tape ran out halfway through the video or the interview. So, be aware of those kinds of things. And, I say that and you're going to think, well, of course, but sometimes in all of the hurly-burly of preparing, that may be missed. Do trial runs to test your questions. Do they actually elicit the kinds of responses that you're expecting and hoping for? Or do they elicit kind of yes, no, and not particularly helpful kinds of information? So test them out. Check your timing, and that does not mean that if you're doing an interview that it may not go anywhere from a half an hour to an hour and a half when your intention is 3/4 of an hour, because people tend to be chatty or not. But nevertheless, check your timing and get some kind of a ballpark that it's manageable within the time period that you've set. When you're interviewing, try to set up a quiet, comfortable, preferably unhurried setting for interviews, so not a principal's office if you can get them somewhere else. But be prepared for changes or compromises when you're doing interviews. Someone may not be able to meet you. They've said, I'll meet you after school. Everything will be done. You can meet in my office. It'll be quiet by then. And then something happens and they have to meet with a bunch of teachers, and you can't meet with them that day, and it's not possible to arrange for the same setting that you had planned before, all that kind of stuff. So just be prepared and to roll with that, and have some kind of plan B, C, and D, so you can respond on the fly in a way that's going to still get what you need, and and not be too cause too much consternation. And having said all of that, in actual fact, interviewing is really an interesting process. I'm always amazed at the forthcomingness, if that's such a word, of people in interviews, and the very, very interesting things that you learn about people and people's lives and the work that they do. So take a deep breath and enjoy. Once you've taken care of all of the rest of the stuff, sit back, try to relax, although you're going to need to be highly attentive. But having said that, enjoy the experience, and your research will show that kind of response from you. So I hope you'll enjoy the readings for this week, this module. I think that they really do quite a good job of talking through some of the issues around qualitative research. If you have any questions about the assignments that I talked about at the beginning, I'll be presenting more information as we get closer to the time. But as you're preparing and something comes up and you're wondering about it, please do get in touch. So I hope this has been helpful, and I hope that you have an enjoyable couple of weeks going through Module 5, and I'm really looking forward to your comments. I'm sure they'll be every bit as wonderful as they were for the for Module 4 and a quantitative analysis. So I'm looking forward to great things. Take care.